Have you ever felt that urgent need to urinate, rushed to the bathroom and, instead of relief, were hit with unbearable burning, a pain that seems endless, and the sensation that your bladder never empties completely? If this has happened to you, know that you're not alone. Urinary tract infections are much more common than most people think, especially after the age of 50, and they can turn simple, everyday moments into real torment. Many people believe it's normal to wake up several times at night to go to the bathroom, or to feel burning every morning when urinating. But the truth is that none of this should be considered normal. These signals are your body's way of warning that something isn't working properly, and when ignored, they can lead to an endless cycle of recurring urinary tract infection. They are treacherous, appear when you least expect them, and silently undermine your quality of life. What few people realize is how far this problem goes beyond physical discomfort. It robs you of sleep, drains your energy, affects your mood, creates insecurity in social situations, and can even harm relationships. After all, living with constant pain and urinary urgency carries an emotional weight that very few truly understand. And here comes a crucial detail. The body has natural resources that can be used to your advantage, strengthening your immunity and building a barrier against the bacteria that insist on attacking your bladder. When these resources are lacking, vulnerability increases. And that's exactly where the right vitamins come in. They aren't miracles, but powerful tools that help your body defend itself naturally and consistently. In this video, we're going to talk about the 7 most important vitamins to protect your bladder and drastically reduce the risk of urinary tract infection after the age of 50. What you'll discover here may completely change the way you see urinary health. Before we dive into the topic, let me ask you something important. Subscribe to the channel now. We're aiming for 1,000 subscribers, and every click you make helps this content reach further. And one more thing, leave a comment with the phrase, "I want to protect my bladder." I need at least 100 comments for YouTube to show this video to more people who also suffer from urinary infection. So participate right now, because it makes all the difference. Now let's understand together, why does the bladder become more fragile after 50? What changes in the body that increase the risk of urinary tract infections so much? The truth is that aging brings natural changes to the body, and one of the first systems to feel these effects is the urinary system. The bladder mucosa, that protective inner lining, gradually loses its strength. This means that bacteria have a much easier time sticking and causing inflammation. On top of that, immunity, the body's shield, also becomes less efficient with time. The result? Urinary tract infections that are more frequent and harder to control. In women, the drop in hormones after menopause makes this problem even worse because it reduces lubrication and alters the natural balance of intimate flora, opening the door for bacteria. In men, it's often the growth of the prostate that interferes with fully emptying the bladder. This leaves residual urine behind, and stagnant urine is the perfect breeding ground for bacteria. That's why after 50, urinary tract infections cannot be seen as something simple. They become a real health risk, capable of compromising energy, sleep, well-being, and even the freedom to live without fear of pain or urinary urgency. When we think about urinary infections, most people only think of antibiotics, strong medication, and doctor visits. Of course, in acute cases, this may be necessary, but what people almost never talk about is the power that small nutritional changes can have on bladder health. Vitamins, for example, are not just supporting actors in health. They act as invisible shields, strengthening the body so that it can react and prevent bacteria from gaining the upper hand. The bladder, just like any other organ, depends on nutrients to stay intact and function well. Imagine the bladder lining as a defensive wall. If this wall is weak and full of cracks, it only takes a small bacterial invasion for infection to set in. But when that wall is strong and well-nourished with vitamins that stimulate cell regeneration and boost the immune system, bacteria find it much harder to cause damage. On top of that, some vitamins can change the urinary environment, making it less favorable for infection-causing microorganisms. Others act directly on the immune system, ensuring that defense cells react quickly before the infection spreads. This means they don't just help prevent flare-ups, they also reduce the intensity and frequency of pain, burning, and urgency episodes. After the age of 50, when the body naturally absorbs fewer nutrients and immunity declines, this replenishment becomes even more essential. We're not talking about miracle formulas, but smart strategies that restore to the body what it needs to function in balance. If there's one vitamin that deserves the spotlight when it comes to urinary health, it's vitamin C. Known as a powerful antioxidant, it goes far beyond strengthening general immunity. Its direct effect on the bladder makes it a true shield against the bacteria that cause urinary infections. One of vitamin C's biggest advantages is its ability to slightly acidify urine. This detail makes all the difference, because the bacteria responsible for most infections, like the dreaded Escherichia coli, struggle to multiply in acidic environment. In other words, when you maintain healthy vitamin C levels in your body, you're creating hostile territory for these microorganisms, stopping them from easily clinging to the bladder walls. Vitamin C also stimulates the production of white blood cells, which are the body's defense cells. These are the ones that go into action at the very first signs of bacterial invasion, preventing the problem from turning into a painful, recurring infection. For those who've spent sleepless nights running to the bathroom or suffered from relentless burning while urinating, understanding the power of this vitamin can be a huge relief. And there's more. Vitamin C helps reduce inflammatory processes that weaken the bladder lining. Think of it as reinforcement for that internal wall of defense, making the bladder's surface more resistant to constant assaults. The ideal is to prioritize natural sources of this vitamin, such as oranges, acerola cherries, kiwis, strawberries, and guavas. But in some cases, especially after 50, supplementation may be necessary to reach proper levels. For all these reasons, vitamin C isn't just a common nutrient. It's a powerful tool for anyone who wants to reduce their chances of suffering from urinary infections again. Among all the vitamins that directly influence our health, vitamin D holds a special place. Often remembered only for its role in bone health, it is, in fact, one of the keys to the proper functioning of the immune system, and this includes defense against urinary tract infections. Vitamin D works like an on switch for defense cells. Without it, the immune system becomes slow, almost lazy, allowing bacteria such as E. coli enough time to settle in and cause bladder inflammation. But when vitamin D levels are adequate, the body reacts quickly and effectively, fighting off the invasion before it can cause pain, burning, or urinary urgency. The problem is that after age 50, vitamin D deficiency becomes extremely common. This happens because the main source of vitamin D is sun exposure, and many people at this stage of life spend less time outdoors, in addition to the fact that the skin itself no longer produces the same amount as before. As a result, it creates fertile ground for drops in immunity and greater vulnerability to urinary infection. Studies show that people with low vitamin D levels tend to experience more frequent and recurrent urinary infection. In other words, it's not just a coincidence, but a real risk factor. Ensuring a good supply of this nutrient can be the dividing line between living with repeated flare-up or regaining the peace of a more protected bladder. Moderate sun exposure is essential, but not always enough. That's why supplementation is often needed, always under medical guidance, to maintain balanced vitamin D level. Taking care of vitamin D means strengthening the body's entire defense system and, more specifically, giving the bladder the protection it needs so it doesn't become an easy victim of urinary infection. When we think about urinary health, vitamin A rarely comes to mind. Yet it plays a silent but essential role in protecting the bladder from infection. Its main function is linked to the regeneration and strengthening of mucous membranes, which serve as a natural protective layer lining the inside of the bladder. Imagine this mucosa as a delicate shield. When it's intact and well-nourished, it forms an almost impenetrable barrier against bacteria. But when weakened by nutrient deficiency, aging, or constant inflammation, it leaves room for microorganisms to settle easily, causing pain, burning, and repeated infection. This is precisely where vitamin A makes all the difference. It stimulates cell renewal and helps bladder tissue recover from small lesions caused by bacterial action. In addition, it strengthens the epithelial system, not only in the bladder, but throughout the body, ensuring a stronger physical barrier against invaders. Another important point is that vitamin A also helps regulate the immune system, enhancing the action of defense cells that directly fight the bacteria responsible for urinary infection. In other words, it reinforces both the walls of the fortress and the soldiers on the battlefield. Sources of vitamin A are relatively easy to include in the diet. Carrots, pumpkin, mango, liver, egg yolk, and dark leafy greens are all rich examples. But it's important to remember that after age 50, vitamin absorption can be less efficient, making a varied and balanced diet even more important. That's why vitamin A is considered one of the pillars of urinary health. Without it, the bladder loses its first line of defense. With it, the mucosa gains resilience, making it harder for bacteria to enter and reducing the chances of new infection flare-ups. If there's a vitamin that works quietly but powerfully against the effects of urinary infections, it's vitamin E. Often remembered only for its antioxidant action, it actually plays a fundamental role in controlling inflammation, one of the bladder's biggest enemies. With every urinary infection episode, the bladder lining suffers from irritation and inflammation. This repeated process, besides being painful, weakens the tissues and leaves the organ even more vulnerable to new bacterial invasion. It's as if each flare-up leaves behind small internal scars that, when accumulated, make the bladder more sensitive. Vitamin E acts precisely at this point, helping to reduce inflammation and protecting cells from oxidative damage that weakens the urinary system. Furthermore, vitamin E improves blood circulation, ensuring greater oxygen and nutrient delivery to the pelvic region. This better circulation promotes tissue recovery, speeds up healing processes, and strengthens the bladder's natural defenses. It's no exaggeration to say that without good circulation, the bladder is slower to react to infections. Another important benefit of vitamin E is its contribution to balancing the immune system. It not only fights free radicals that fuel chronic inflammation, but also helps keep defense cells ready for action, reducing the chances of recurrent flare-ups. Foods such as sunflower seeds, walnuts, almonds, olive oil, and avocado are excellent sources of this vitamin. Including these in your daily routine can provide natural and effective support for those who frequently suffer from pain, burning, and urinary urgency. That's why vitamin E should be seen as much more than an antioxidant. It is, in practice, a natural anti-inflammatory that protects the bladder, helps tissue recovery, and reduces the likelihood of new infections taking hold. When it comes to urinary infections, many people only think about boosting immunity, but forget that the body needs energy to keep its defenses active. This is where the B complex comes in, a group of vitamins that work together to provide vitality and strengthen bladder health. B vitamins act on several fronts. B6, for example, is fundamental in controlling inflammatory processes. When present at healthy levels, the body can respond better to bacterial attacks, reducing pain and bladder irritation. B9, folic acid, and B12 are essential for producing red blood cells and keeping the immune system alert, ready to respond to any invasion. In addition, these vitamins are directly linked to nervous system balance. And you might not realize it, but stress and anxiety are triggers that weaken the body's natural defenses and increase the risk of recurring urinary infection. The B complex helps reduce this impact, providing more stability so the body can respond appropriately. Another important point is that after age 50, the body has more difficulty absorbing these vitamins, especially B12. This silent deficiency can be behind low immunity, constant fatigue, and even the body's reduced ability to fight bladder bacteria. In practice, keeping healthy B complex levels means giving your body high-quality fuel to function better. It's like making sure the immune system's soldiers have enough energy to fight off invaders and protect the urinary system. Natural sources include lean meats, eggs, legumes, whole grains, and green vegetables. When well included, these vitamins become powerful allies in preventing urinary infections, reducing both the frequency and severity of episodes. Up until now, we've talked about the main vitamins for bladder protection, but there are others that, though less often mentioned, play equally important roles in preventing urinary infections and strengthening the urinary tract. Vitamin K2, for example, often linked only to bone health, also influences blood circulation and calcium balance in the body. This is crucial because when calcium isn't properly directed, it can build up in the wrong places and promote kidney stone formation. These small stones irritate the bladder, making it more vulnerable to inflammation and bacteria. Maintaining good K2 levels helps reduce this silent risk. Another ally is vitamin B2, riboflavin, which acts directly on healing and maintaining cellular integrity. A well-nourished and regenerated bladder lining is less prone to lesions, reducing the entry points for bacteria. B2 also contributes to energy metabolism, ensuring that the body maintains the vitality needed to fight off invaders. But it's not just vitamins that make the difference. Simple complementary strategies can change the whole picture. Proper hydration is one of the most powerful. Drinking enough water dilutes urine and helps wash out bacteria that might cling to the bladder. Another key point is diet. Reducing excess sugar intake, for example, deprives bacteria of the fuel they use to multiply. Quality sleep is also critical. It's during deep rest that the body activates repair mechanisms and strengthens the immune system. People who sleep poorly tend to suffer more from recurring infection. In short, small daily choices, such as keeping adequate K2 and B2 levels, drinking water regularly, eating a balanced diet, and valuing sleep, work like puzzle pieces. Together, they turn the bladder into an environment hostile to bacteria and favorable to health. Now that you know the main vitamins capable of protecting your bladder and reducing the risk of urinary infections after 50, it's clear that we're not talking about minor details, but powerful tools that can transform your daily life. Each vitamin has a specific role, whether strengthening the bladder lining, boosting immunity, fighting silent inflammation, or creating an unfavorable environment for bacteria. When they all work together, the result is a BT, stronger urinary system, more resistant, and less prone to painful, recurring flare-ups. It's important to remember there's no magic solution. The secret lies in consistency, maintaining a balanced diet, staying well hydrated, taking care of your sleep, and, of course, including these vitamins smartly in your routine. By doing this, you not only reduce the chances of suffering from burning, pain, and urinary urgency, but you also regain quality of life, energy, and confidence. Urinary infections are treacherous. They may seem like a simple problem, but when they become repetitive, they steal sleep, affect your mood, reduce your energy, and create insecurity. Becoming aware of this is the first step to turning things around. The second step is action. And now you know where to start, strengthening your body from the inside out with the right vitamin. And before we wrap up, here's a special invitation. Don't stop here. If you really want to go deeper into this subject and learn even more about how to care for your urinary health naturally and effectively, watch the video that's now on your screen. It will complement everything we've discussed here and may bring insights that make even more sense for your life. Click and continue this path of caring for your health. See you in the next video.